It's been 50 years since the first recorded Speaking Up group for people with learning disabilities got together. We want to celebrate this. A lot has happened since then. Now there are lots of self-advocacy groups all over the country. We want to look back at our journey over the last 50 years. But what is self-advocacy?
Self-advocacy is speaking up for yourself, the things that are important to you.
Self-advocacy means you know about your rights and you can speak up for your rights. And you are able to make choices and decisions that affect your life.
Why is self-advocacy important? Which is a good question. It is important to learn self-advocacy skills because it helps you decide what you want in your life. It helps you learn about what choices you have.
When you have good self-advocacy skills, you can have more control and make decisions that are best for you.
When the first recorded Speaking Up group met in 1972, life was very different for people with learning disability. Lots of people still live in this big institution like the old hospital. For a lot of people's life, it was so hard. People with learning disability were shut away, not even being heard. So sometimes, for many years, people didn't have much choice or control in their life, and there was a lot of abuse that happened.
The first Speak Up meeting in 1972 took place in this house 50 years ago. At the time, the campaign for the mentally handicapped invited people who were living in long-stay hospitals to come to meet with professionals. The event was called Our Life. They called it participation, not speaking up or self-advocacy. Over the next few years, some hospitals and day centres set up groups. They called them patient councils or student councils.
In 1981, almost 10 years after the first meeting, MenCap started a participation forum. It was all about learning how to do self-advocacy. They met in London. Gary Borley was there. He was a young self-advocate at the time.
Well, we were very new, and of course I was just coming out from my day centre, and there was a group of people, or other groups of people coming from various day centres from different London boroughs. And we did actually form a smaller group of about eight of us. But in the early days, we were talking, all sorts of things. I had my own little briefcase with me, and my three-piece suit, and I had moustache and everything. It was, and I was a young man, and also probably an angry young man, and we were talking about things that were concerned people with what was happening in day centres. A lot of people were angry about all sorts of things.
1984 was a big year. Gary and some other self-advocates went to the International Self-Advocacy Conference in the USA.
The international conference was like overwhelming. It was just good role models of the Americans and Canadians there, were actually like speaking on soapboxes, or what they call it, speech boxes, and speaking up for themselves, being very political. And I thought this is something we should have back in England, and so I learned a lot during my time in Seattle, where the conference was. The first conference helped to set up People First in this country.
Can you tell us a bit more about label Jars Not People?
That was a T-shirt at the time that we got actually the idea came from America at the time. We saw that, and because they were fighting against mental retardation, which is a horrible word in itself, but we were fighting against the word they're using at the time called mental handicap. And it was during those 80s that people with learning disabilities at the time didn't like that label. They hated it. They think it was an insult. And they preferred learning disability. And that when we decided that was to use that term, but people prefer to be called by their name. So that was the idea of also selling the T-shirts in this country with label Jars Not People.
Groups started popping up across the country. Early groups were Camden People First, People First London and Thames, and Skills for People in Newcastle. In 1988, International Self-Advocacy Conference took place in London.
In 1994, there was a big England People First conference in Daventry. People at the conference wore T-shirts like this, "The Way Forward" on them.
People First groups did a lot of really important work to make positive changes for people with learning disabilities in the 1980s to the 1990s. Simone, a member of People First London, said, "Before 1995, people with learning disabilities had no civil rights. People First campaigned to make sure that people with learning disabilities were included in the 1995 Disability Discrimination Act, and that this legislation was made into Easy Read. This was the first piece of legislation in Easy Read. All the Easy Read documents now coming out of government are a result of this hard work by People First.
One group became the Central England People First, and they set up a new group all over the place.
A Black People First group started and held their own conference in London. In 1996, two self-advocates from England were keynote speakers at a big international conference in Finland. Ian Davis, who was one of the advocates, said, "Never did I think I can go from having no choices and being forced to attend a day centre to speaking at an international conference, running my own company and forcing organisations to making things better for people like me, but I did.
In 1998, 5 people with learning disabilities met with the Department of Health to talk about setting up a national forum. The National Forum started in 2001 as a part of the White Paper Value and People, which promised a better life for people with learning disabilities and their families. It was the first time there was a national voice for people with learning disabilities in England. To make the National Forum work, England was split into 9 areas. The National Forum had a regional forum in each of these areas. Lots of other small groups started at this time and would go to their regional forum meetings.
The National Forum did a lot of work to try and make things better. In 2004, the Forum started doing some work on healthcare and pushed the government to improve the healthcare.
In 2007, they got involved in the Stamp Out hate crime campaign.
In 2009, they got involved with the No Secrets Review, helping to prevent abuse.
In 2011, the Forum produced a guide to self-advocacy. In 2012, they published Staying Strong.
But in 2017, it all stopped because funding for the National Forum from the government stopped. Michael was on the forum and he said, "I don't know how the voices of people with learning disabilities is going to be heard in the future." The big achievement of the National Forum was to show that people with learning disabilities can have a real say in making things better for people with learning disabilities.
When this government funding was cut, some small groups were finding it really hard to get funding, but some groups keep staying strong, carried on. But groups in the Northwest region had continued and organised the national conference each year in lovely sunny Blackpool.
Dudley Voices for Choices are bringing groups together for 2022 National Conference in Birmingham.
Why does self-advocacy matters today? Self-advocacy is more important today as important as ever, as services for people with learning disability are being cut. Self-advocacy is really important thing during COVID and helping people through the hard times.
What does self-advocacy mean to you?
Self-advocacy is important to me because I think it gives people a chance to have a voice, and if they're not heard, then no one will get anywhere in this world.
Well, for me, self-advocacy is important because it makes people with disabilities and autism be more included in things, and to show everyone else that they're people too.
It means to help me speak up for myself and to do what's right for me.
Why is self-advocacy important? Because it's not only just about speaking up about what you want in your life and what changes you want, but also speaking up with other people with learning difficulties, with disabled people, to make real big changes in our life.
People out there don't believe, but people with learning disabilities, Down syndrome, autism, can do those things, can achieve it, but it just shows you, but we can. It just all we want, as we've always wanted, is to be given a chance.
You know what I would really love to see just across the world and the nation, and just have more groups that does self-advocacy. Have a group in Catford, have a group in Lewisham, because I just don't think there's enough of them across the country and stuff like that. So I would really like to see a group in each person's area. It would be great to see that, because then we feel like we've done our jobs.
Our film is just the short outline of this important history. There is so much more to share about the history of groups around the country and the amazing things they have achieved. What's the history of your group?